Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Juggernaut. I apologise for the voice sounding a little bit off. I think I'm coming down with something. I feel fine, it's just that I sound a little bit, well, off. Today, I have a few topics of conversation, so let me just get this out of the way. The game in the background is Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, and it's a spiritual successor, I guess, to Borderlands. It is set in the Borderlands universe, but it's a Dungeons & Dragons game that Tiny Tina is playing, kind of like Assault on Dragon Keep, except, I'll be completely honest with you, nowhere near as funny, but, yeah, it's fine, it's fine. The gunplay is really satisfying, the spells and everything is great, the UI is okay, there's a few improvements I would do to it, but, yeah, it's fine. Gets the job done, and that's kind of my review of the thing, I suppose. I think that's about it. So, let's get on to the news, and there's been a few personal things that have happened, as you can probably tell by the title, in my country, and to me personally, and we're all sort of affected, and I will like to mention that, even though I'm pretty sure I've almost never talked about anything related to my country or related to real-world politics or anything. Well, except the few occasional clips about gun control and firearms and stuff like that in general, and laws regarding that. But overall, I try and steer clear of that now, though I really can't do that, and I'll explain why. But first of all, let's get into the main stuff, the meat and potatoes, the reason you're all here, and that is the YouTube series, right? The channel itself and the content that I make here. So recently, I've finished two series. Finished two series, not quite. I finished one series. That's the Stellaris overhaul thing, the Star Trek New Horizons mod, and I just reached a logical conclusion to that series. Honestly, there really wasn't much else to do. I formed the Federation, and that was the entire point, and yeah, at that point everything was, I'll be honest, fairly trivial. So I finished that one, and I also ended the current chapter, if you will, in Stalker, and that is Escape from Pripyat 3.0, and I will be moving on to Escape from Pripyat 4.0 soon, TM, right? And what I mean by that is, I will move over to Escape from Pripyat 3.0, to Escape from Pripyat 4.0 in a little while. First of all, I want to rest a little bit from the game, because I'll be completely honest with you, I remember pretty much everything about Stalker Anomaly at this point. I remember where most enemy spawns are, I remember where most of the stashes are, and I just got a little bit overburned, right? From everything. It's a little bit much, let's say. And well, yeah. The game's fun, but if you play it for thousands upon thousands of hours, like I did 100 and something episodes of this series, I did I don't know how many, like 50 to 80 maybe, something like that, of the previous series. I did 2 full character playthroughs with sort of on my own time before I started recording. And I think I recorded a little bit in between all of that as well. And yeah, I did a lot of recording, and I played a lot on my own, and I don't want to get, bored of the game, so I'm going to give it a little bit of a break, not too long, just a tiny bit, like, let's say another week or two, and then I'll be back with regular uploads of Escape from Pripyat 4.0, which is amazing and changes a lot about the game. Mechanically, it's sort of still Stalker, and it's still similar, but it's really good, right? I'll get into it when we actually start playing. But suffice to say that the game is really, really good. So, that's as far as the series are concerned. Basically, those who have ended, Mass Effect will continue to appear periodically because, well, A, it's not the most popular series, and I don't really do it for... I don't know, this doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I didn't really do it for the immediate viewing audience, if that makes sense, which is a very weird thing to say when you have a YouTube channel, but what I mean by that is I wanted to do Mass Effect and to have it on the channel, to have all 3 games on the channel more sort of as an homage to my younger self, who absolutely adored the games, and I still do, especially the story. The gameplay is a little bit here and there at times, but I adore the games as from a story perspective and the character development and all of that, so I wanted to have them on the channel, and you know, they might not appear in the most regular format, like Stellaris did, but I'm doing it mostly for myself and for the ability to have that series there sort of always on the channel, and if, you know, a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, I'm like, man, I miss Mass Effect, I can go back to that series and be like, oh, there it is. I can look up a specific episode, or I can, I doubt I would watch my own series, but you get the idea. I wanted to have it sort of as, the same way you keep photographs of moments that you really liked in your life and vacations and stuff like that. I wanted to have this series in pretty much a similar vein to that, I suppose. Alright, so that is as far as those things are concerned. I want to check this out really quickly. But now, let me talk to you a little bit about the new PC. So, I will make a separate video on this because it is too long of a conversation. But the TLDR of it is that I've bought a AMD 7900 XT. And I am very happy with my purchase most of the time. I'm certainly way happier with this card than I would be with an NVIDIA 3000 or 4000 series for the same money. And it is, in my modest opinion, and I've been an NVIDIA fanboy for a very, very long time, but it is, in my modest opinion, that AMD have blown it out of the park, unless you are looking to buy a 4900 Ti. Which is the top-end card worth multiple thousands of dollars. If you're looking to buy that, then you might want to go with NVIDIA if you want to buy a card of that quality and that level. But at the same time, for anything that isn't 4K gaming, I believe that is heavily, heavily overpriced and just honestly not worth it. So there you go. That's my opinion, but I will get into some fine nitty-gritty details about the VRAM, about how NVIDIA is ripping us off, essentially, and selling us lower quality cards on purpose so that we have to upgrade them sooner, as soon as next year, probably, how 8 gigabytes of VRAM for a card that costs more than $1,000 is completely unacceptable, and yeah, etc., etc., right? I'll get into that in a separate video for the GPU and tech nerds out there, but for the rest of you guys, I don't want to bore you with that too much if you're not interested, so I'll leave it at that. But I'll just say that, yeah, AMD is great, and that their driver support is really phenomenal, and I even had a brush with their customer service, and they fixed a problem that I had virtually within a day. Or within 2 days, so I was like, I was amazed. It was a driver issue, and they actually fixed it. Yes, I reported the driver issue, and I've made AMD better by doing it. It's incredible, I know. It was a very odd and niche and specific driver issue. Basically, I'll retell the problem, and I'll get into more details, like I said, in a separate video, but I have to retell just the problem. I had the problem where Paradox Grand Strategy games, so Crusader Kings, Hearts of Iron, stuff like that, would crash if I had Chrome running in the background. They wouldn't load up. You could play them fine, but on the loading screen, I think when the graphics card is loading up something, I don't know what it's doing, doing some type of loading of graphics. Is that what a graphics card does, Juggernaut? Yes, you understand what I mean. While it was doing that, it crashes the driver. So the card just resets, basically, which was very weird. It didn't happen on any other game, and I wrote a ticket, and I was like, yeah, I have this happening. It's a brand new PC. It's not a Windows issue because I just reinstalled it, and it's, you know, everything else is working fine. It worked fine on the previous graphics card. Now it's just with this one that it's a problem. They're like, okay, give us a minute to fix it. They released an update, and they fixed it. Incredible, I know. I made AMD better. Hooray me. I don't know if there was something that they've encountered previously. It's incredibly niche. Matter of fact, I couldn't even replicate it every single time. I think you had to exit the game, like exit Hearts of Iron 4 or something, and then boot it up again, and then it would crash. like I said, extremely niche. I have no idea how we got to something like that, and how you even begin to fix it, how that becomes a problem at any point, but they fixed it. They somehow fixed it, alright, so I imagine it was something really silly that caused this issue, but there you go. Matter of fact, I have a feeling I know what the problem might have been. I think it had something to do with the overlay for the software. I think the overlay did something that the Hearts of Iron and the Clausewitz engine didn't like. Maybe. Because it crashed the moment the overlay popped up for the game. A bit weird, right? A bit weird. Anyways, that's it. Let's get over to some personal stuff right now. So I covered the channels. So actually one more thing I completely forgot. I will replace Stellaris with something else. Currently there's a couple of games that I wanted to try out well, I just didn't have the chance to play, because the last card I had was a NVIDIA 1060, and it's not a good card, let me be honest. I mean, it's a great card for some 1080p mid to low tier gaming, like budget gaming and stuff like that, but if you want to play at 1440p, which is my monitor currently, if you want to play it above 60 FPS constantly, you're just not going to get that out of that card. And for some of the newer games, like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, like Cyberpunk, well, Cyberpunk was more or less playable on some medium settings, but if you want to play it on some higher settings, if you want to play any of the newer games, like Hogwarts Legacy or something like that, the card is just not going to cut it at 1440p. And now I'm able to try out those games for the first time, and I've been, Red Dead Redemption, I also couldn't play at the highest graphical settings. I played it around, basically on medium, just to get a feel for the game, but I never actually finished it. But yeah, I can actually play all those games now, and it feels awesome, and I really wanted to test them out. I didn't have much of an opportunity, I'll be completely honest with you, because I had a lot of work to do for uni and stuff like that, but I'll get into the personal stuff after this. Alright, so I will replace Stellaris with something. I don't want to replace it with a lengthy game, because I already have two extremely lengthy games on the channel. Something short and sweet would be ideal, but I'll get into that. I'll decide what a little bit later when I actually clear up some of the real job, quote-unquote, stuff that I have to do, and I'll get into that once I'm a little bit less busy, because I do have a lot of writing to do. I do have some seminars to attend, and yeah, it's a bit busy until like the end of the month, I think, for work, but after that I should have around 2, maybe 1.5 months of not really having to do much at all, so I can focus on recording and maybe even building a bit of a backlog. Alright. So, that's it as far as that is concerned. Let's get over to some more personal stuff and some very dark topics indeed, which I wish I didn't have to cover, but I will, because, well, like I said, there's a good reason for it. I never talk about politics and real-life stuff, at least very, very rarely, especially not something as serious as this, but I'll get into it. So, for the first time in its modern history, my country of Serbia has, this last week, had a mass shooting. Rather, it had 2 in the space of 2 days. One was a school shooting, the other one was some maniac who picked up an automatic rifle and started shooting people in a small outskirts of a small town. I think it was basically a village, and there were multiple casualties and multiple deceased individuals in both of those instances. In the school shooting, it was a primary school, so it was very young children. One of the workers in the school, I think the janitor, was also killed, and several were injured, as you might as well imagine. And this is the first time in modern history of our country that we've had such a accident. Now, I appreciate that certain places like the United States, it's a little bit more commonplace, but you have to understand the United States is a much, much bigger country. For a country of less than 7 million, I think at this point we're at 6 point something million people. To two mass shootings in quick succession like that are shocking, to say the absolute least. They are shocking. And I completely understand the inability of both our government and our people as a whole to respond to that in any, I don't want to say rational way, because how do you respond rationally to something like that? But the fact that our response was a bit strange, let's say, I think I find completely understandable. But at the same time, what I don't find understandable flirts and borders on the absurd and the funny, and it's really hard to say the word funny when two tragedies like that happen to your country, relatively near to where you live, in 2 days. It's really hard to say a word like that, but at the same time, I'll get into it a little bit, and I'll talk to you about it, and I think you'll get a feeling of just why I'm saying that, and just what I mean by that. So, the very first response of our government that I've heard, the very first official thing to come out of our government as a response to those two tragedies, from the legislative, let's say, part of the government, not from the police and stuff like that, obviously they responded to the scene about 30 minutes later. Oh yes. The police failed to stop the shooting at the school. The school shooter turned himself in, dropped his gun, and just surrendered. That's how the school shooting ended. If he didn't want to surrender, the number of casualties would have been way higher. He also had, I believe he had Molotov cocktails that he wanted to throw at the school, but he got scared and gave up on the idea. Which is, yeah, I know, but the fact that the police didn't stop it, that shooting or the other one is, yeah, it's indicative, I think, of quite a few problems that we have here. But it's not just that. The response of the actual government, the people that are in charge of making the laws and, you know, where the majority of our taxes go to, let's be honest, their response was to increase the tax for shooting ranges. Excuse me, what the actual fuck are you talking about? How is that connected with any... First of all, the tax increase was, like, minuscule, and they will also conduct... what would you call that? Like, they will check up with shooting ranges, and then they will police them a little bit more firmly to make sure that they're, you know, following the law and that they are, all of their weapons are stored properly, I guess, and that all of their paperwork is in order and stuff. They're going to police them more regularly, and they're going to do more random checkups, and they're going to increase their taxes. See, as a rational individual right now, which I'm sure my audience is, you're probably thinking, well, these shootings must have happened near a shooting range, or the shooters must have picked up the weapons there and stole them or something. No, you don't understand. This has nothing to do with those... The two are completely separate and have nothing to do with each other. Let me explain this to you. It's like... You see a car run over a person in the city, and your response is to ban farm animals. That's the equivalent of... that's basically what we're talking about here. This is insanity. This is beyond insanity. This is absurd, leveling on the funny, like I said, but it's really hard to say something like that, given the situation. But I understand it. It was a state of shock and everything. I understand. Okay, it's a difficult time for all of us. Okay, but what came out as a result afterwards, when sort of the initial shock had died down, was, well, I don't say equally absurd, but also absurd. There were protests around cities. Protesting what exactly? This, I understand the reaction, I really do, the need to sort of leave your house, go out there and say this is wrong, and to sort of try and do something about it, but at the same time there's nothing you can do about it. It's too late, right? It's already happened, but there's a sense of powerlessness that you get, and you're like, I want to leave, I want to do something, I want to take action, but there's nothing you can do. Now it's too late, you know. You do stuff before things like these happen. You know, any number of things, but now there's nothing you can do. Can you do something to prevent it from happening in the future? You can try. It is, in my modest opinion, that it is human nature that we will always have individuals like that. That there will always be murderers, always be psychopaths, regardless of how good our system is and how, you know, short of living in an absolute tyrannical hellhole with no liberties and no freedom of movement, you will never be able to stop individuals like that from lashing out, I guess, in any way, shape, or form. I don't really want to talk about gun control right now. Both the incidents, unfortunately, involve firearms, but like I said, main, let's say, weapon of choice for the school shooting was a Molotov cocktail. And, I mean, he had 6 or something. Had he thrown those at the school, people would have died and suffocated inside, and there'd be a whole lot more dead. And I don't know how to tell you this, but you can't exactly police Molotov cocktails. It's alcohol with a rug in it. I mean, you can ban alcohol, but ask the United States how well that went. And if we start banning stuff just because people might abuse them, then we're gonna live in padded rooms. Because you can get in a car and run over 50 people in the middle of Belgrade. And, well, I feel disgusting for saying that, but it is something that can happen. Actually, just saying that might get me in trouble given the current political climate in my country, but luckily not many people watch these videos, so I can spew whatever I want. But what I'm saying is, it's not something you can prevent. You know, there is always going to be that potential for someone to abuse anything in life, right? A transportation vehicle, a commodity, yes, a weapon, but also anything else, like a kitchen knife, his own hands, for crying out loud. You can strangle people with them, right? You can't flat out bans against certain types of products or certain types of commodities or really anything aren't going to make that just forever go away. But the sort of following response was, well, okay, we're going to have a police officer in every single school from now on. Yeah, do you know how expensive that is and how difficult that is and how problematic that is for a country that already has way more police officers per capita than any of the neighboring countries? But I'm not against the idea, it's fine, it's just ludicrously expensive, and where are you going to get the police officers from? I mean, they want to start doing that from tomorrow, basically from Monday. Where are you going to get the officers from? Yeah. And if you're just going to recruit anyone that wants to do it, well, isn't that a problem as well? Because all of a sudden you don't have trained officers doing security in schools, you have a bunch of kids who just signed up for the police academy. They haven't even gotten their full training yet, their full education yet, and then you just throw them in there. It's a difficult thing, you know. Like I said, I'm not against it. Having a security officer or a police officer in school to, you know, not necessarily stop shootings, but to just sort of be a figure of authority there for the children, and sort of sort out any minor disputes if there's something like that, if there's fights and stuff like that, and, you know, have them act in that sort of capacity as a sort of a public service officer rather than a traditional police. I'm completely for that. That's fine. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it's difficult. It's difficult to do something like that. It's expensive, and you need to put a lot of thought behind it, much more than just make it happen, Mr. President. Well, the president's saying make it happen, right? Either way, it's not that easy. Plus, you have to understand that that something that has already happened, a tragedy has already struck this nation. But how we respond to it may shape this nation for decades, if not centuries, to come. The laws and practices we put in place now, as a reaction to this, will change our lives and change the lives of future generations, probably. So keep that in mind. A similar thing has happened to Australia, where as a result of a shooting, they've imposed some drastic measures to the point where airsoft guns are now banned in Australia. And there's not an argument just about gun control. Partially it comes down to that, of course, but at the same time, gel blasters, I think, are also next to be banned from Australia. Flat out banned. It's probably going to be one of the most disgusting things I've said in today's video, but I don't want to live in a country like that. Consequences be damned. Yeah? At some point there is a line you cross where you no longer can sacrifice your liberty for the possibility of dissuading another tragedy. There is a line there that we must acknowledge, and I feel like not a lot of people are acknowledging that, and a lot of people are saying, yeah, that we have to do everything and anything to stop a tragedy like that from happening ever again. Yes, but not everything and anything to that extent, right? There is a line, and I firmly believe this, and there is nothing anyone can say that will dissuade me from believing this, that there is a line which we must not cross in limiting the freedoms and liberties of honest, law-abiding citizens. If we cannot just take away... I mean, I feel like an idiot even saying this, but apparently it needs to be said. You cannot take away all the freedoms, rights, and liberties from law-abiding citizens just to maybe hypothetically prevent something from happening in the future. It sounds absurd. I mean, you can't put us all in concentration camps just because one of us might do something bad years from now. Oh, you're exaggerating. Am I? Because if we start banning video games, media... Well, actually, the media I'm inclined to agree with, but if we start banning video games, which was also something that was mentioned, that the reason that both of these shootings have happened is because of video games. I know. I thought we got over this in the 60s and 70s, but apparently not. And then they now want to ban video games from our country, and like this is not the response. This is not the correct way to respond. If there even is a correct way to respond to something like this, but this is not it. Yeah, I mean, it's absurd. And of course, there's been calls for stricter gun control, but here's what I love about it. 99% of people that are calling for stricter gun control in this country right now are not aware of what our law is about firearms and munitions. We have some of the strictest gun laws in the world, and yet we are among the most well-armed countries on the planet. Does it hold a candle to the United States, who I think have more guns than people, according to some surveys? I doubt it's entirely true. Not every single individual in the United States has a weapon, and you're not going to convince me that they have two, every single citizen, right? Some of it comes down to collectors, some of it comes down to... A lot of it actually comes down to the economy. Simple fact of the matter is, people in the US can afford more weapons than we can, right? I'm going to buy one rifle, and it's going to take me several paychecks to save up for it, and then several more paychecks for the ammunition, for the... if I want to put a red dot sight on it, it's going to take me a couple of more paychecks, and saving up from those paychecks to register the firearm, to get a safe for it, not necessarily in that order, but you get what I mean. Like, it takes a lot of money, and it takes a lot of saving up to buy at least one rifle. In the United States, because of a more liberal law, and B, because of just a better living standard, you are able to afford more weapons. I think a lot of it comes down to that as well, but understand that despite having some of the strictest gun laws in the world, we are also extremely well armed as a nation, and I am proud of my nation for that. There's no... that's no secret. How do I put this? Like, I am proud of my nation for doing... Well, I mean, saying the right thing when it comes to that would be a little bit macabre, maybe, given everything that's happening right now, but I am proud of my nation for maintaining that level of enthusiasm in firearms. Either way, let's get over to some of the more absurd stuff that happened later. The protests, like I said, were confusing. I understand the need, but what are we exactly protesting? Is my question. Mass shootings and murder. Murder is bad. Okay. There haven't been any demands from the protests, and there's certainly things you can demand. It is, in my modest opinion, and I'm no expert on the subject, but at the same time, I do like to think that given my education and my hobbies and everything, that I can weigh in at least somewhat sensibly on this topic, right? I think that makes sense. I do believe that our culture as a whole, and that our education system, and that our attitude towards not necessarily just education, but our attitude towards children and towards youth growing up, and the kind of content that we expose them through via the internet, like the TikToks and the Instagrams and stuff like that, is not something we parents really pay attention to, and they will let their children watch any kind of nonsense they want and think that it has no effect on them. It does. It does. I can tell you from personal experience that I've watched Total Biscuit when I was younger, from his WoW days, if you remember that. Although that wasn't necessarily in my youth. No, it was, but I wasn't exactly a kid for the entire duration of it. It played a significant role in how I turned out, how I developed, and you bet your ass that everything they see on TikTok and even on national television, the glorification of criminals and OnlyFans girls and stuff like that, it's really bad, right? It's really bad. You turn on the TV in Serbia and you will not find anything normal to watch most of the time. You can find some sports, but other than that, reality TV shows and just trash, right? Just absolute trash. I think that is far more to blame for the overall state of our culture and our society than any law or any police officer or anything else. And to just explain what I mean by this, the day after the shooting, there's a whole bunch of kids, right, aged 10 to 14, 15. Although at 14, 15, at 15 plus, I really don't consider you a kid anymore, and everything you do will have consequences for your life. And if you threaten someone with a firearm the day after the shooting, your life is ruined, I'm sorry. You've had time to grow up, right? You've had time to grow up. If you bring a toy gun to school and start shooting people and thinking it's funny, and you don't have the parents to explain to you what just happened, and you are 15, I'm sorry, you've forfeited certain rights for the rest of your life. You have to understand that what you do has consequences, right? Which is what happened. We had around 40 incidents the following day of either people reporting school shootings that didn't happen, or coming to school with toy guns. There was actually one individual who came with a knife to school and stabbed someone as well, so there you go. And it's just been crazy, and I really need to say this. It is unprecedented. We are, at least what I would consider, one of the safest countries in those terms in the world. We've never had a mass shooting. We've never had an incident like that. There's been, like, I think in the 90s there's been some criminal shootouts here and there, but that happens in every country, everywhere, right? There's always crime. There's always someone wielding a gun around at some point. I mean, wasn't it Japan that banned all firearms effectively, and they still had a mass shooting after that? Their prime minister was nearly assassinated by a makeshift weapon as well. It happens. Stuff like that happens. But as far as safety is concerned, I really do believe we were, up until this point, one of the safest countries in the world when it comes to gun crime. And yeah, it's sad, honestly. It's sad. The response has been sad, and our inability to realize what the problem is has been sad. Although I say that, I'm genuinely proud of the people, of my friends around me, and the people that I follow on social media, and some of the independent news outlets that I follow on social media, who have pinpointed, well, in my opinion, pinpointed the problem a hell of a lot better than any protest or any government reaction have. And they talked about the core issue: mental health, stigmatization of mental health, parents not talking to their children. I mean, if your kid takes 6 Molotov cocktails and 2 handguns to school, and you don't ask them a question of what the hell are you doing, and you don't realize that they've done that, and you don't realize that they've been planning to do it for months, you failed as a parent. But it just is what it is, right? Especially if your kid does it, you know, especially for the kids that have done pranks and TikTok challenges and whatever nonsense the next day of bringing plastic. They keep calling the media, they keep calling them plastic guns. Technically speaking, a Glock 17 is a plastic gun because it's made out of polymer. No, they were toy guns. They brought toy guns to school. But if your kid does that the following day to school and thinks it's funny, and the kid's 16, there's something deeply wrong about your household and the way you've educated him and the way you've raised him. Yeah, it's deeply, deeply troubling. And no law is going to change that, and no law is going to fix that. It's, yeah. But anyways. I digress, as they say. It's difficult to talk about this, but I think the core of the issue we have here is addressed in those social media posts like that. Raising our children, education, healthcare, mental healthcare, stigmatization of telling someone you have problems, because one of the most common responses that you're going to get in this country when you tell someone I might be dealing with depression, I might be dealing with anxiety, and I don't feel too good, I feel stressed out. Doesn't matter if you're a kid, if you're an adult. The go-to response is, oh yeah, you're feeling stressed out? Well, I have it much worse. Let me tell you about my problems. And then parents will do this to their children as well, and I'm well aware of this. You have problems? What kind of problems do you have? You have no job, you have no stress, you're not providing money for this family, you just have to go to school and learn, and what kind of problems can you have? You're not allowed to have problems, and etc, etc, and you're not allowed to have depression, and that's kind of, that's genuinely how most conversations go here when it comes to mental health care. And it wasn't a problem up until now. It was a problem, but it wasn't a problem like this up until now. And now that it happened, I get the feeling that a lot of people are not going to take the right lessons out of this. That, a 12-year-old can be stressed out, and they can deal with certain issues. And occasionally, you might want to talk to them about it, or occasionally they might even want to talk to a professional about some of the problems that they're dealing with. And if we don't stigmatize it, and if we deal with this problem on time, and we provide them the guidance that they need to dealing with their stress, with maybe someone's been bullied, and they don't know exactly how to respond to it, and they just ball it up inside of them, and at one point it snaps. Maybe if we, tell them that kids will be kids, right? I genuinely believe that, by the way. I don't think there's a single person in my life that I know that hasn't been quote-unquote bullied at some point. Kids tease each other, right? Kids are cruel, but it's sort of, if it happens constantly every day for a long period of time, it's a problem. But yeah, occasionally you'll get into fights as a kid. Didn't we all? I mean, I'm talking to some of the older generations in my community. We got in fist fights, right? I mean, we got in fights in school. We got in verbal arguments with our friends, and the school rivals that we had and stuff like that. And it was normal. It was a part of everyday life, right? It was just part of going to school. Is that you might have to argue with someone, and you might have to shove around with someone, and if it happened every day, then it's a big problem. But every now and again, kids, right? It's just what we do. We fight over our toys in the playground, and it just happens. Tell them that it's normal, that it's all right. But if it happens every day, then there's a different problem there, and there's things you can do to stop it. And we should stop it, but just genuinely talking to children. I think that's what's missing from this country, and it's not just this country. It's I feel like it's everywhere around the world. Honestly, we've lost that. We've lost the idea that it's necessary, nay, mandatory, that you talk to your children about their day at school, about if they have any problems, and not just dismiss everything they tell you and be like, you don't have a job, I have a 9-to-5 job, you don't know what it's like. Yeah, I have a 9-to-5 job right now, and let me tell you something, I feel a lot more relaxed and a lot less stressed out now than I did when I was 16 and 15. Maybe even 12. Yeah? So, sod you in your 9-to-5 job. If you can't raise your children right, and you can't lend them an ear every now and again to talk about their problems. Yeah, fuck you. It's 30-something minutes into the video, 40 minutes into the video, I get to say it, I'm sorry. But it pisses me off to no end when parents just ignore their children, and they for years and years and years, they just ignore all of their problems, and when something terrible happens, at the end of it all, they're like, oh, how could this have happened? How could I have prevented this? Yeah, maybe if 10 years ago you just sat down, at one point in the last 10 years, you just sat down with your son and or daughter and just had a chat with them, maybe something would have changed, yeah? Maybe. But, modern age, the popular solution is just stick a phone or a tablet in their hands and let them wander off, both in the virtual spaces of the internet and in real life. And people get confused when we tell them that they aren't exactly exposed to the most stimulating and greatest of content on TikTok, or whatever it's called, TikTok, right? I don't have that. I'm not particularly interested in it, but I do know that there's a guy on YouTube that calls it the Tac-Tacs, which is boomer humor, alright, but it's funny to me. So yes, on the Tac-Tacs. And like some of the other responses also to this that I heard, we shouldn't let our children play with toy guns, we should ban toy guns. This is, had they not played with toy guns, they wouldn't know what a gun is. What planet do you live on, I swear to God. But this isn't the worst of it. The worst of it came from our president a couple of the day after the last incident, where he said, we must completely disarm this nation. There are too many guns among civilians, and I will completely disarm this nation. It is not politically the most popular thing to do, but I must do it. Come and take them, sweetheart, but okay, well, what are you talking about? Well, it turns out he, like many others in his cabinet, has no idea what our law is like currently. So he suggested things that are already in the fucking law. They suggested, like, background checks, and then they suggested mental health checks before you can purchase a firearm. That's been in the law for 200 years or so. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but it's been in the law since my grandfather was born, right? That's been a part of a prerequisite for you to own a firearm, is that you have to go and do a mental health check with a certified psychiatrist. You have to do a physical health check as well. After you pass those, you need to do firearms training, which is also something that's been suggested, but has been a thing for God knows how long. All of this is already in place, and it's just hilarious that they're suggesting it now as these innovative ideas. They're acting as though you could come into a Lidl store or a Aldi or a Walmart for the Americans, right? You just pick up a firearm off the shelf and take it home and not have to even pay for it. That's what they're acting like the law is. Trust me, it's not. Yeah, from first-hand experience, it is exceedingly difficult to acquire a firearm in this country. You need the approval of your neighbours, for crying out loud. Yes, your neighbours. If your neighbour says you can't have a firearm, I don't trust him. You're not getting one. Can we? Which is what I think genuinely that and the what they consider to be valid reasons for owning a firearm. Yes, you need a valid reason, which was also another thing. Like, well, why does anyone need to have a firearm? aside from every bone in my body cringing when I hear that question, because I can ask you, why do you need to have a fork while you're eating? Because, you know, you don't need it, it's sharp, you can eat with your fingers. We don't distribute rights based on what I currently need and what you think I need, but regardless, it's also a part of the law. You have to explain why you need the firearm. You need a valid reason, which I think is in most European countries. Some European countries treat a valid reason to be, well, I really want one and I'm a law-abiding citizen, and they're like, okay, that's a valid enough reason, take it. Some countries require a lengthy and then detailed explanation, and the most common reasons in this country for owning a firearm is hunting or sports. That's it. Now, there is a substantial number of illegal firearms in this country, and the second shooting was done with an automatic weapon, which was illegal in this country for, or has been illegal in this country for, I think, probably a century, right? Maybe even more. I don't think there was a time where you could buy, since the Second World War, certainly not, there wasn't a time where you can buy an automatic weapon and hold it legally. Yeah, I'm pretty sure since the invention of automatic weapons, they've been outlawed here. Pretty much. I mean, weapons in general have been outlawed in the communist times for a long while, and they just wouldn't let anyone have guns. And then they allowed hunters to have guns, and nations started arming up again, and we have a culture like that is very fond of firearms, very fond of hunting, and has a tradition around keeping firearms from their grandfathers, and it's kind of a legacy, and etc, etc. I don't want to get into that right now, but the piece de resistance, and I'm going to stop here because it's a 46-minute video, but the piece de resistance of all of this, and something that pissed me off the absolute most, was when a certain president of a foreign government offered to help disarm our nation of all legal and illegal firearms. I'm going to talk to the Americans in the crowd right now, specifically, because I believe we're going to be on the same side here, guys. I think you and me are going to be shoulder to shoulder with this. As far as other European countries are concerned and people from around the world, I hope you understand how unacceptable that is to me. But specifically for the Americans, because I know what the culture is like over there. And I think even Americans that do not like firearms and do not own firearms are going to agree with me on this. If a foreign government and foreign police officers come to my country to disarm me from weapons I've purchased and hold legally, I am willing to go to war over that, and I am more than willing to kill someone in that war for that. I understand that I'm saying this on YouTube and that this is probably going to land me in trouble, but to quote, I think this comes from Texas or somewhere in the south of the United States, I will dig my boots into the earth and I will not leave an inch, right? I will not retreat by an inch. This is a hill I am both literally and metaphorically willing to die on. Can you imagine in the United States a foreign government like Mexico or Canada or some of the neighboring countries, right, because it is a neighboring country, coming to the United States to disarm US citizens from weapons they hold legally? Now, if the government wants to go after illegal weapons, they have my full support. I will go there with you and take those illegal weapons from criminals and people that have not registered them and hold them illegally. Don't get me wrong, and hold them illegally, sorry. I am with you on that. More than fine. You know, you're welcome to all of them. I will help you find them as best I can. Go for it. Good job. It will make the nation safer. I really genuinely believe that. Go for it. But if you overnight turn law-abiding citizens that have carried firearms and have firearms for decades into criminals for having firearms, simply for having them, no ability to retain them, and you bring in a foreign government to take those weapons away from your citizens, or a foreign government comes in to take them away, that is nothing short of a declaration of war, in my opinion. You're not taking land from us, but you are taking my personal property, which is just as bad, in my opinion. There is no difference. It doesn't matter if you come from a foreign government to take my house, or my car, or my gun. I treat it the same way. You're taking personal property which I've spent months and years saving up for to purchase, to own and have, and to use in sports, in hunting, in all the legally sanctioned ways of my country up until that point. And you're just going to come and take it away? That is a hill I will fight on, right? And that is a hill I will not leave. Certainly not alive. I'm hoping that the American crowd can understand this, and I'm hoping that the European crowd and the rest of the world crowd can also understand this. Specifically the Americans, because, well, you literally fought your war of independence over it, and last I checked, it wasn't necessarily considered the most outlandishly evil thing to do, to want to preserve your independence and your property. And if that's a controversial thing for me to say, and if this will get me banned off of YouTube for saying that, then so be it. I don't want to be on this platform if it does. If anyone takes offense to that, I have nothing to say to you. I hope I'm making sense, yeah? I really do. That pissed me off the most. I left it for last because I said some controversial things, yeah? I left it for last on purpose, but
Ready to cast.
That's it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching this video. Like, subscribe down below if you enjoyed it and want to stay tuned with the rest of the content that I produce on this channel. Until next time, my name is Juggernaut. Have fun. Take care. And I'll see you in another video with some brighter topics and hopefully something a little bit more fun and less grim and dark. Unless it's 40k, which is grim and dark, but still in an escapist sense and not a real life way. Have fun, take care, bye.